Cüneyt Özdemir, we are again having a historical day. We are facing an endless election in the US. This is nothing usual for us because normally on a given day, unless there's a major thing that happens, like a cat going into the power station, we receive the election results on the same day towards the end of the evening. But then again, everyone is being tried by this unending election. It's not happening for the first time. US elections, that's always the case. That's always what happens with US elections. And just like a football game, we are all watching closely the screen, whether it's going to be Biden or Trump becoming the next president. We are going to have the business circles with us during this broadcast, and we will have participants both from the US and from Turkey. We will have some guests from the business circles mostly. Let's take a look at the most recent picture. Biden has 264 and Donald Trump 214. So if 6 more places are taken, then Biden wins. But then again, there have been some halts. Some of the results are now being taken to the courtyard, etc. We are going to talk about that all. My first guest is Mehmet Ali Yalçındağ. Thank you very much. As the president of Turkey U.S. Business Council, you are hosting us here today. Thank you. How are you, sir? We're doing fine. How are you? I take a look at the results. Otherwise, there's no reason why the Turkish people are closely following up the US election results. It's as if it's one of the football games, popular football games, or Fenerbahçe or Galatasaray. Interesting, indeed interesting, I would say. Yes, indeed, last six points in order to get it. Let me introduce you with my correspondent. There is this correspondent from Çanakkale, and interestingly enough, he is actually the reporter that most closely follows the US elections, even closer than the journalists and reporters in the States. I mean, Turkish reporters in the States. Yunus is the one who actually started tweeting. So Yunus, come up and tell us what the result is. Should I tell you about the election system? No, please stay where you are and tell us about it. Sometimes people show up on TV and tell lengthy stories. Don't do that. Keep it simple and just imagine your mom is listening to you and she doesn't know anything about US elections. The scores, the points don't matter much. US is composed of states, and as you know, US has 2 parliaments, the Senate and House of Representatives. The sound is quite low, so the interpreters are having difficulty in hearing the speakers. So there are 3 representatives selected. So the one that wins it, Nebraska and Maine are the exceptional states, and this is the reason why they are critical for this election. For the 1st district, 2nd district, and 3rd district, they take a look at the winners, and the ones that win them will actually be luckier. The reason why Joe Biden is luckier in the sense, Trump didn't expect it and Joe Biden got one of that. That one delegate, that one seat, that city of 200,000 actually determines the progress of the US elections. 538 delegates, the one who gets 270 or more will win it. And currently, the ones in red show the Republicans and the ones in blue, the Democrats. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. The election results are still not determined because it's still ongoing. And Democrats and Joe Biden, these people, I mean Biden and his circles, attach great importance to self-protection and personal protection from COVID. That's why they actually called for the mail mailing mail voting, unlike the Trump supporters. Fox News and the Fox News and also the SNAP show that Arizona is Biden's, but then again, places where Republicans are more, they are not added onto the system. And maybe tomorrow on Friday we can get Arizona, Trump says. So Nevada, Arizona, and Pennsylvania are the states, and votes are not all added up. Trump has 15,000 difference in votes in Georgia, and this increases or decreases. So Trump may get Georgia and may lose Arizona. Trump did not say, I won the elections, because both the Democrats and the Republicans wait for the count of the total votes. In Michigan and Pennsylvania, stop counting, because all the votes that are counted are for Biden, but continue in other places because it's going to be for himself. That's his faith, that's his belief. Okay, that's the place. Okay, let us now come to the Senate. This is what we get from Fox. I mean, of course, the source is important. And regarding Fox broadcasts, I read some rumors that Trump called Murdoch and asked what kind of news are they covering. Well, this is also very important for foreign policy. Senate is very important, and which party has the majority at the Senate makes a difference. Democrats will have to get 4 senators. They lost 1 in Alabama, but in Colorado and Arizona, they got 1 from the Republicans. So it boils down to Georgia and also Arizona. So there are 2 elections. So if 2 Republican senators get the votes in January, there is going to be elections for the second round in January. So it indeed makes a difference who gets the Senate, but then again, we may have to wait until January. So what do we see at the bottom? At the bottom, we see the Electoral College. Here, Democrats will most probably have the majority, but then again, the Republicans will have 10 to 12 new seats, especially they increase the number of female representatives. So everyone watching the elections from a distance used to say that Republicans only get white votes, but then again, this has been changed with the votes of the Hispanics, etc. So the number of Republicans increased and the other structures. So Mehmet Ali Bey, we have a former representative and senior manager of Monsanto. I suppose you know the gentleman already. So Mr. Toby Moffat is with us. I am going to ask him some questions and then I'll get back to you. I will, well, I have been told to ask in Turkish, so I will do so, sir. So what do you think about the election results? How do you find it from a perspective from the States? Are you surprised? Were you caught by surprise? And do you think it's still unusual that the results are not certain? The floor is yours.
Well, yes, as far as the second question is concerned, of course, it's unusual, but it's unusual largely because of COVID and because of the tens of millions of people who decided not to go in person, but to mail their ballots in. So we're experiencing something unusual. But by the way, I think what will come from this experience is much more mail-in voting as opposed to in-person voting in the elections that follow this one. As far as the results is concerned, I was guessing between 270, which is the necessary number, as was just pointed out, in terms of electoral votes, and 290. I think that Biden will probably end up with around 290 or maybe even 300. The president is making a lot of noise now. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yani şunu merak ediyorum. Biden'ın
I wonder about the following. It's quite widely discussed if Biden becomes the president. We are talking and asking this among ourselves, what will this mean for Turkey? What kind of an impact will this have on Turkey-US relation? What do you think in that respect? As you have a US perspective, what kind of a relationship will Turkey and US have with Biden's presidency, if that's the case?
Look, we all know, I think everybody who's participating in this event knows that there are certain difficulties in the relationship. And they know that there's a political grassroots, if you will, factor in the US that sometimes works against Turkey in the bilateral relationship. That's a given for the moment. But Turkey is just too important to not have a very solid relationship with the United States. And I think that President Biden, should he become president, understands that far better than the current occupant of the White House. I've known Joe Biden for, I hate to say, over 40 years. We were both very young members of the Congress together. And he's a guy who treasures and values these relationships and the role of the United States in the world. Obviously, there's tension in our country between the Trump view, which is more a unilateral view, U.S. go it alone sort of view, and Biden is much more of a multinational view. So almost immediately, he will move to reinsert the United States into the climate discussion around Paris, the Paris Accords. Almost immediately, he will do outreach, in my view, to our staunch allies, including Turkey, with regard to Iran and the nuclear question. He knows that there are touch points and crisis points in the world, as there are at every moment. And he'll be much more aggressive about trying to get some near consensus on some of these issues. Libya, where Turkey obviously has a very important role to play. Syria, even though there are differences, obviously, around the Kurdish question, there are so many things that Turkey and the U.S. can do together, in addition to other countries. Turkey's role in Africa is something that I think a President Biden would understand and would want to leverage to the benefit of both countries and to the countries on the African continent. If you just take something like industrial policy in the US and you look at the fast increasing concern about Chinese near monopoly control of rare earth materials. These are the materials that are so critical, not just to tech around the world, not just for cell phones, not just for laptops, not just for wind turbines and solar panels, but for defense, jet fighter engines and so forth. These rare earth materials, critical materials, are very much controlled by the Chinese. And it's not in the interest of Turkey or the United States to have that be the case. So I think these are the kinds of things where, Africa comes into play in that because it's a source of these materials. And so the whole question of a secure and reliable supply chain is something that Turkey and the United States, I think, will come together around.
Peki, çok teşekkür ederim.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing the general framework with us. Thank you very much for your contribution. I suppose there's a problem with the sound. Kenan is working on it, but if he can't, then I will take care of it. This is lovely because if you are broadcasting on TV, you have to be formal. But when you want to suffocate someone, you're openly stating that I'm going to have the sound guy do it, and he will do it. So Mr. Moffat said something very important. I suppose you will also underline that. It was 4 years ago in New York that when Trump was elected, you were there and no one expected him to be elected. And 5,000 journalists were waiting for the speech of victorious speech of Clinton, and you were the only Turk attending Trump's speech, thank you speech, and then we had a walk the following day, and you had told us about that. And then you became the president of the business council, and your role have been discussed, and you have somehow formed a diplomacy. New names have been given to that. So if Trump goes, will the US-Turkey relations come to an end? Biden and Erdogan don't get along well. That's not the case. I mean, Biden also paid a visit to Turkey and he had talks with Erdogan. That's not the case. Let's assume Biden is elected. Then what will happen to the relationship?
Biden came to Turkey after July 15th, and, you know, because it was kind of late, he even apologized for it. They invited me to Ankara back then, and Turkey-US, not with my Turkey-US Business Council hat, but CNN. I am also the CEO of CNN. That's why I was there. So I had this bilateral meeting with Trump. He was interested in what I lived that night when the station was attacked. I saw that he is very close to Turkey, familiar because he's been Secretary of State for a long time. And the president has talked to him several times, even as prime minister. So he's aware of the importance of Turkey. He knows politics. To be honest, instead of someone we don't know becoming the US president, I would prefer Biden becoming the president as a businessman. 4+4, I don't know for how long he was in office, but if Turkey is important, if Turkey is really an important power in its region, if it's the second largest army in NATO, if it's an important strategic ally of the US. Of course, we have our conflicts every now and then. Things get said because Turkey does not do everything that they want them to do. So when that happens, the US sometimes gets mad. So sometimes in political and military things don't always go well. But at the end of the day, our mission is commercial diplomacy. We had a good relationship with the Trump administration, especially Secretary of Trade. Reason for that, Trump is a businessman, doesn't come from politics. So the Department of Trade is important for us. And he was also a businessman. So we approached as a businessman. We wrote letters, we carried out research, and then it ended up they took us very seriously. They invited us, and then the relationship developed. Of course, the main reason for this relationship is, as I just said, we approached with the identity of a businessman, because what we're doing is really commercial diplomacy. We want trade to develop between the two countries. There's this huge America, $20 trillion worth of economy to explore. I mean, if it were you, Junaid, wouldn't you have your eyes set there? How can I sell more goods there? Because we have to be a heavy exporter as a Turkey, 150, 160. No, we should be having $500 billion worth of exports so that we can contribute to the development of the country and to the GDP. So our main concentration is between the two countries, because when you look at it, there's more than 1,800 American companies in Turkey, Junaid. Important figure. Multinational, giant corporations, $1 trillion worth of revenues, turnovers. And For years, they've been in Turkey, and they're very happy. They're making money. They're investing. They're making money. They're investing. So this is a very important reference. Direct investment for America to Turkey. What would people first do? Cüneyt, you invested in Turkey. Are you happy? You've been in Turkey for a while. Has anything happened? You know, no, I'm very happy. I've been investing for 15 years. If you say so, other Americans will follow suit. Therefore, we use the entire ecosystem, and we try to create people who in America who love Turkey. We want to create Turkey-friendly Americans. So it doesn't really matter whether it be Trump or Biden when you're a businessman. Exactly. I don't know about the political or military side, but I look at it as a businessman. Maybe Trump and Erdogan have become close personally. Maybe, I don't know. But when you look at it, Biden and Erdogan are close as well. He has visited here. They talked several times. So maybe a different process may get underway, but in the end, considering the different games we're playing in the region today, we're in a more important role in Eastern Mediterranean, in Libya, in Azerbaijan, in many places. We're on the table, and America wants to play a world game. So if you're at the table, he will talk to you more seriously. If you're not around the table, they'll ignore you. You've lived in these states a lot longer than I have, so you know this to be the case. So I'm not expecting a very significant surprise, whatever the problems were with the previous administration. They will continue the same this time as well. But as business world, right, yes, we were in harmony with the Trump administration. Now, it may take a bit longer to talk about the same things, but I mean, we'll go along the same lines, and the Secretary of Trade, the president, as the Turkish business world will approach them, will write to them, will say we want to develop relations further, we'll come up with the projects. For days, such conspiracy theories have been talked about. Finally, somebody says something logical. Oh, Biden came, we're dead. Oh, what are we going to do? You know, there's that perception. Where's Turkey-America relations? Well, let me put it this way. As businessmen, the Republicans there, when they were in the administration, every time I visited Washington, I visited the Democrats and the Republicans, and you have to. By, you know, talking to one or three people, you can't achieve anything. America is a huge structure. Decision makers, you have to inform them and explain yourselves to them, your problems. You have to share with them. You have to clearly say what you want from them. If you want something, if it's Republican, if it's Democrat, we're talking about the same things. Convey your problems. Turns out to be our biggest problem. After I was the deputy chairman at TAİK, this was the roadmap we came up with. If your roadmap is good, no matter which party you approach, these people will listen to you, because we were always talking to both sides. We were in balance. And as you explained, they listened. So I don't foresee any problems. Haluk Dinçer, the previous chairman of Turkey-US Business Council, Mehmet Ali Bey is sending you his regards. Can you hear me? Good evening, Cüneyt. I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you very clearly myself. Hopefully, so do the listeners. Otherwise, I'll be committing murder here. If you can hear, fine. Haluk Bey, are you surprised about these results? Were you expecting this to be such a close run? It's not possible, of course. We're looking at the surveys, as Mehmet Ali Bey said, and in the surveys, of course, pre-COVID, Trump was leading. Suddenly, post-COVID, Biden came ahead, and based on latest research, 7 points, 9 points, but never 1 or 2 points. As far as I know, nobody foresaw that. We were just, you know, making jokes about Trump and Biden being head-to-head, but that happened to be the case. No, I wasn't expecting. Do you agree with Mehmet Ali Bey? It looks as if Biden will come. If he does, oh my God, we're done. Or will the commercial relations between the two countries continue in one way or another? I agree with Mehmet Ali Bey. Presidents come and go. Turkey is an important country in the region. The US is economically and militarily and politically very strong. So Turkey-USA relationship has to be strong. Biden is very different as a leader. He has dedicated his life to politics, 36 years in the Senate, 8 years vice president under the Obama administration, now about to be elected the president, as Mehmet Ali Bey said. He knows Turkey very well, has come numerous times, knows Erdogan very well. You may be able to remember among the members of the Business Council, he knows us well as well. He came to our meetings, he delivered speeches in 2013. Again, he hosted us, Mr. Erdogan and ourselves. He raised his glass. I remember such scenes. So I believe we have a good dialogue. Well, you know, we may say we do have a good dialogue with and there'll be a good dialogue with the president as well. I view this very positively. And the difference we have to underline, Cüneyt Bey, is when President Trump took office, because he was not from politics, he was challenged in establishing a cabinet, and there have been lots of changes. Many seats were left vacant in the office of the Foreign Office. So there'll be transfers from the Obama team this time. Susan Rice's name is coming up, the former security advisor. They know Turkey-US relations. So that will be the team that will come about. He will not be left alone like Trump was, I think. I'm fine, I'm relaxed. I don't see any negative things. Thank you very much for joining us. Good day. Mehmet Ali Bey, how do you foresee a period of transition? You witnessed it one-on-one. In case of Trump, you would come to New York very frequently. Biden's transition period internet website is put up, right? It's ready. 2008, you would remember, his wife is in Biden's transition party. So the cabinet will not be just of Republicans. He plans on a cabinet that represents the entire country. And he says significant Republicans will take place in his administration. We may say that Joe Biden is preparing an administration that also includes Republicans. Joe Biden was announcing his foreign policy campaign without being asked. It was a first. He talked about Karabakh without anybody asking a question to him. Following all that, the secretaries, the ministers are known, and diplomats are coming to check out houses for rent. This is what I heard. Mehmet Ali, whereas the transition period of Trump was a bit chaotic, right? They couldn't find anyone to appoint. Correct. What Haluk Bey said was important here. Here, the Trump administration, as far as the personal relations were concerned, one-on-one relationship was very important. Whereas now with Biden, if you impact the people around him, you can impact the president. If you can establish good relations with people around him, then the people around him will be able to influence the president. That's the structure we're going to. So the one-man structure that used to be the case with Trump. Because when you come with your identity as a businessman, when you don't have a political infrastructure, you establish just such a systematic. So some of those people you already know, but those people are new to politics as well. Of course, administering with them is more challenging, but there's more experience here now, as Haluk Bey just said. He has been in the Senate for 30 years, more than 30 years. That's important. So there will be a difference here. Relationship with the president, yes, but a relationship with his environment will be very important. You are talking to Ivanka Trump one-on-one or through Kushner, not after he became the president, after they went to the White House, no. More official, diplomatic as a businessman, because the American president, White House, when you say there are certain rules, a certain systematic, and you have to abide by it. And as a businessman, it's not as if, you know, she's your friend and you can call her up, you know, you can't do that. There's a systematic you have to go through. It has to do with your business, what you're representing. There is the Turkish business world. So if you have something to say about that they need to know, then the relevant person in the Trump administration, you will reach them through these diplomatic channels. That's what we try to do. Murat Yetkin, journalist, colleague of mine. Hello, Murat, how are you? I think you are also keeping close tabs, writing. Is Turkey ready for Biden? Was the title of your recent article. Is Turkey ready if Biden administration comes? Hello, Cüneyt. Hello, other guests.
Türkiye Biden'a hazırlanıyor. Öyle diyelim.
Preparing for Biden. Let's put it that way.
Biraz geç mi başladı bu hazırlanma
Did we
diye
start late
düşünülebilir.
for this preparation? We may ask ourselves.
Aslında 2 senedir süren bir takım girişimler var.
There have been some
Sesimde bir
interventions
sorun
for
mu
the
var
past
Cüneyt?
2 years.
Sanki
Is there a problem with my voice, Cüneyt?
ben duyamıyorum senin
I
sesini çünkü.
can't hear your voice, Cüneyt.
Şimdi oldu. Şimdi
Okay,
oldu.
Now I can hear you.
Peki,
Okay.
yani 2 senedir süren
For 2
bir
years
takım
now,
şeyler var. Bir
Some things
paralel
have been
diplomasi
going on.
var.
Parallel diplomacy,
Yani
so to
cumhuriyetçilerin
say.
yanı sıra
Apart from
demokratlarla da süren bir
Republicans,
diplomasi var.
there's been diplomacy with the
Bu
Democrats
çabalar
as well.
sonucunda son
And as
belki
a
de
result of
birkaç
these
hafta
efforts,
diyebiliriz.
the
İçinde
last
şöyle
couple
bir
of weeks,
çerçeve çizilmiş durumda
the
Ankara'da.
following framework has been
Bu
set in
çerçevede
Ankara.
şöyle bir şey yer alıyor.
Framework,
Eğer
there
Trump
is
kazanırsa ki
Trump
hala bu
wins,
ihtimal var.
and
Yani
there's
hani
still that
Biden kazanmış gibi
likelihood. I mean, we're all
konuşuluyor da hala
acting as if
Trump'ın
Biden
kazanma
has won,
ihtimali
but there's
var.
still a chance
Matematik
that
olarak
Trump
olan her şey,
will
kağıt
win.
üzerinde olan her şey
Mathematically, on
mümkündür
paper, it's
siyasette.
possible. So it may
Eğer
happen.
Trump kazanırsa
If
bu
Trump
belki kısa
wins,
dönemde
maybe in this
Erdoğan'ın
short
ve
period,
Türkiye'nin yararına
Erdoğan
olacak
and
gibi bir
Turkey will
algı var
benefit
ya da
from
daha
it, is
az
the
zararına
perception,
olacak gibi
or
bir
at least
algı
less
var.
harm will happen.
Ama
Seems to
uzun
be the
dönemde
perception.
Trump'la devam
But in the
etme
long
durumunda
term,
uzun
if
dönemde
Trump
bunun
continues,
Türkiye'ye daha fazla zarar vereceği
this will harm
yolunda
Turkey
bir kanı
more.
var. Neden?
There's also that
Çünkü
opinion. Why?
Trump'ın
Because
uluslararası plandaki öngörülmezliği ve irrasyonel davranışları,
unpredictability
duygusal
on the
çıkışları
international
giderek daha
forum,
fazla
his
tepkiye
emotional
yol açıyor ve
reactions are
aynen
increasingly
kullanılan
causing more
deyimi
reactions,
tekrarlayacağım.
and I will repeat what is being
Dünya
said
daha kaotik
exactly.
hale gelebilir
The world may become
deniyor.
even more
Yani
chaotic,
Trump
it is
yönetimi
said,
devam ederse
if the Trump
yani
administration
yanlış anlaşılmasın,
continues.
Ankara'daki
Don't
yönetim
misunderstand.
çevreleri bunu söylüyor. Yani Trump
Ankara
daha
circles are
kaotik bir
saying
dünyaya
this.
yol açabilir.
Trump may
Dolayısıyla bu
cause a more
Türkiye'nin
chaotic
de
world,
zararına
so
olacaktır.
this may be to the
Biden
detriment of
kazanırsa
Turkey as
ki
well. If
şu anda
Biden
yüksek
wins,
ihtimal gibi o
which
görünüyor.
seems to be a
Biden
higher
kazanırsa
likelihood, if Biden
bu
wins,
belki kısa dönemde, yani
maybe
kısa
in the
dönem
short
derken
term.
neyi
When I
kastediyoruz?
say short term,
Görevi
what do we
devralmasından
mean?
itibaren bir 5-6 ayı
From the
kastediyoruz. Yani
period of transition
uluslararası
past 6
ilişkilerde bu
months.
hani
In
Biden
international relations,
devralacak,
Biden will
elemanlarını
take over,
gerekli
will
yerlere
appoint
işte az önce
his
arkadaşımız
staff
güzelce
as
söyledi.
our
Yani
friend
yerleşecek,
just
duruma
explained,
hakim olacak, dümene
and will
geçecek.
become
Yani.
dominant of the
Hani bu
situation.
süreçte Türkiye'nin
During this
ve
process,
Erdoğan'ın, özellikle
Turkey and
Cumhurbaşkanı
especially
Erdoğan'ın
Erdoğan,
belki
President Erdoğan,
çok hoşlanmayacağı, sıkıntıya düşüreceği
maybe
gelişmeler
will
olabilir.
not
Neden? Çünkü
be
Biden'ın
happy
son
with some of
çıkışları
the
belli.
developments,
Yani Doğu
because we
Akdeniz
know what
konusunda,
Biden
Suriye
has said
konusunda,
recently about
Türkiye'deki
Eastern
demokrasinin
Mediterranean,
kalitesi
Syria,
konusunda,
and the
hukukun
quality of the
kalitesi konusunda bir
democracy
takım
of Turkey,
çıkışları
quality of law in
oldu.
Turkey. He has
Bu
said
çerçevede
something.
tabii
So
seçimde
within that
verdiği sözleri
framework,
çok şey yapmayacaktır.
he
Hani
will
çok da unutmayacaktır, bir
not
şeyler
forget what he
yapacaktır.
has
Ancak
promised during the election
az
campaign.
önce
He will do
Yalçın
something.
Dağ
However,
da söyledi.
as Yalçın Dağ has just said,
40 yıldır, yani
for 40
laf olsun
years,
mecaz anlamında söylemiyorum
I'm not
Cüneyt.
saying this
Gerçekten 40
metaphorically,
yıldır
Cüneyt, really, for 40
Türkiye'yi yakından
years,
izleyen birisi.
he has been keeping close
Biden.
tabs on Turkey.
Yani geçenlerde
Biden.
Yetkin Report'ta
Recently,
bir fotoğrafla beraber,
Yetkin
arşivden
Report,
bulduğum bir fotoğrafla beraber
there was a
yayınladım.
photograph from the archives that I published.
1980 12 Eylül 1980
1980,
askeri
September
darbesi
12,
öncesi
1980
Türkiye'ye gelip
military coup. He has
bir
come to
takım
Turkey before that
askeri taleplerde
and
bulunan
has made
ekip
some
arasında Biden senatör
military
olarak Dış İlişkiler
demands.
Komitesi üyesi
He was
olarak herhangi
in
birisi
that
olarak değil. O
on
zaman
that
37
team
yaşında
as a
daha.
senator. He was
Galiba
a senator
yarın
as well back then.
doğum
I
günü
think tomorrow is his
yani
birthday.
78 yaşına
He
basacak
will be
Biden'ın
78. Biden.
yani bu kadar süredir dış
For
ilişkilerde ve
such a long
Türkiye'yi
time,
tanıyan
he
birisi.
has
Yani
been in
burada
foreign
biraz hafife
relations and
alınma
he
durumu
knows
oldu
Turkey.
yakın
So
zamana kadar.
let's
Yani
not make
ne anlayacak canım işte iki tane lobiciyi de
light of
göndeririz
him.
anlatırlar
We'll send two lobbyers,
filan
they'll
diye.
explain
Öyle
blah
değil.
blah. Some people are saying, but that's
Dolayısıyla
not
bunu
the
niye
case.
söylüyorum?
So
Bunu
therefore,
şundan
why am I
söylüyorum.
saying this? The reason I'm saying this
Batı
is
ile Türkiye'nin batıdan kopmasını istemeyen birisi. Buna
he's
önem
someone who
veren
does
birisi.
not want Turkey to
Bana
break
kalırsa
away
Biden'ın
from the
zaten
West. He thinks
seçildiği
that's
yani
important.
seçilmesi
In my
kesinleştiği takdirde
opinion, if Biden
en
is
önem
definitely
vereceği konular
elected,
arasında
this will be among the
Trump'ın çok ağır
topics that
hasar
he
verdiği
will
Avrupa ve NATO ile
ascribe
ilişkiler
importance
olacaktır.
to. Relations with
Dolayısıyla
NATO
Türkiye'nin de
and
Rusya, Çin,
Europe,
İran
which
gibi bir eksene
Donald has
daha fazla
harmed,
yaklaşmasını
Donald Trump
istemeyecektir.
has
Burada en
harmed a
önemli
lot. He
konu
will not Turkey
S-400
to
konusu.
become
S-400
closer
füzeleri
to
konusu
Russia.
Rusya'da.
S-400
O konuda
topic is important.
evet bir takım yaptırımlar
Yes,
var,
there
katsa
are some
yaptırımları var. İşte
sanctions, there are
kongrede
CAATSA
hala
sanctions,
bekliyor.
in the Congress they're still
O
waiting
konuda da Türkiye'yi ipleri
about that
kopartmak
as well.
zorunda bırakacak noktaya getirmeden bir yol
He will
bulunacağını,
not
bunun
bring
da ben
Turkey to a
NATO
point
zemininde
where
bulunacağına
Turkey
inanıyorum.
will
Aynen
say, I'm
nasıl
walking
Doğu
away. And I'm
Akdeniz'de
sure this will be
Yunanistan'la
found
NATO
within the
zemininde
context
neticede
of
bir
NATO.
yumuşama sağlandı.
Because
Yine o
they
zeminde
soften things
olabileceğini
with Greece
düşünüyorum.
within the context
Ama
of NATO regarding Eastern
tekrar
Mediterranean.
senin
That will
soruna
be the case
dönersem,
again. But
yani
going back to
uzun
your
vadede
question, in the
Biden
long
iktidarının
term,
kısa vadede sıkıntı yaratsa da
Biden
uzun vadede
cabinet may
Biden
cause
iktidarının, Biden
problems in
yönetiminin
the short
Türkiye'nin daha
run, but
işine
in the long
gelebileceği
run, Biden
yolunda bir tespit var.
administration will be more
Neden?
beneficial for
Aynı
Turkey.
nedenden yani
Why? Because of
neden
the same
Trump'a
reasons.
uzun vadede daha
Why
fazla zarar verir diye
more
bakılıyorsa
harm
aynı
in
nedenden.
the
Yani
long term with Trump? Same
Biden'ın
reasons.
bir siyasetçi, deneyimli
Biden
bir siyasetçi
is an
olarak
experienced
daha rasyonel,
politician. He will
akılcı
behave more
ve daha
rationally and
öngörülebilir
he will be more predictable
bir çizgi
in
izleyeceği
his actions.
değerlendirmesi var. Rica ederim.
Murat, thank you very much. Anything you want to add?
Eklemek
Anything
istediğim
you'd like to
bir şey
add to that?
yani ekonomi açısından
Well, from
ne tür
the
sonuçlara yol
economy
açacağını ben de
perspective,
merakla
what kind
bekliyorum
of
diğer
results this
konuşmacıları.
will bring along,
Bakalım ne
I am as
diyecekler
curious
çünkü
as the other
çok büyük bir
speakers.
soru
I wonder
işareti
what this will bring because it's
ve
a
şunu
big
söylemem
question
lazım
mark.
yani
And I
hani
should
dedik ya
also
daha
say
rasyonel
that,
Biden olursa daha uzun
as
vadeli.
I've said,
Burada
Biden is
Türkiye'nin
expected to
yapacağı
be more
şeyler var ve
rational,
Türkiye'nin
more
yapması
long
gereken şeyler,
term. And
yapacağı
there
ve
are things
yapması
that
gereken
Turkey
şeyler
has to do and Turkey
sadece dış
will do.
politikada değil,
It's not only
iç
foreign
politikada
policy, for
bence
domestic
Türkiye'nin bir an
policy
önce
as well.
yani
Turkey,
bu
as
yatırım
soon
ortamının
as
düzelmesi
possible,
için Türkiye'ye yatırım
in order
gelmesi ve
to
Türkiye'nin
improve the
yeniden
investment
daha
environment, in
fazla
order to
üretmeye
attract investment, and in
başlaması
order
için
to start
mutlaka
again
hukuk
to
sistemini
produce,
ve siyaset
Turkey
demokrasisinin
has to
kalitesini
look on
yükseltmesi
to
gerekiyor. Bunun
the
için
quality of
gerçekten
democracy
çabuk
and
adımlar
also
atması
on
gerekiyor.
the laws and regulations, and fast steps have to be taken.
Hadi.
Thank you very much, Murat Yetkin. I strongly advise that you follow Murat Yetkin. He has great news coverage at Yetkin Report. Şimdi Mr. Kasıman, we have you, Ahmet Kasıman. Doing fine, thank you. We were discussing with you about US, whether they would go into Afghanistan or not. I was back then at CNN. So for the first time, Turkey is so closely following up the elections. What would you say to that? Well, this time elections are very closely followed up. So in the sense, I wonder, I don't think that Turkey should feel bad about that. There's always this feeling, why are we so closely following the US elections? There's this complaint, but there's nothing strange about that because it is about the most powerful seat of the world and who is going to take that seat. And the whole world is confronted with global issues. COVID is the most recent problem, and these global issues require global responses. So in such a well-integrated world, who is going to be the next US president does matter, because the decisions that the US president will make, he is going to be as powerful as deciding on and determining the future of many people. There are certain decisions I mean, democracy is you attend the process of decision making that will determine your future. This time, it's not it's not the Turks or any other nations, but Americans deciding on the future of the whole world. For instance, the corn producers in Nebraska, the price that the president quotes for corns, if there's going to be an increase in the corn production, that has a repercussion on the corn producers in other parts of the world. So the whole world is closely watching the US elections, starting with Russian Federation. Of course, it's quite natural that we also follow it. For a certain while, I've been making this observation since 2019. I had seen that when I was living in the States. In Turkey, we always had this complaint from the leftists saying whether Turkey will become the small America, they used to say. Well, it's just the other way around this time. America seems to be like the large version of Turkey. For instance, someone put a picture today saying, if you like, I can come and sleep on the votes. It's quite close. I mean, the same election results and the polls have all proven to be false. Is that only specific to the US? No, not necessarily. This was encountered in Turkey. This has been encountered during Brexit in the UK. So do you think that this is the reflection of the zeitgeist, so to say? There are so many ambiguities, and US being such a superpower goes through these. What do you think about these developments? Well, if I am to make a good projection of the electoral college, better than many Americans seated at their homes, then it is indeed a very well integrated world. I mean, people who think and reflect with certain level of prudency. I prepared a map actually the other day myself, and I thought to myself, Nebraska would be determining the results. I made some minor results. What was your result? 268, 270, and Biden won, according to my forecast. In another scenario, Biden gets 278. The scenario that I worked on. So I think that's the direction Biden is heading to. So why do we think that this is a reflection of the zeitgeist? That's such a crucial question. As for your first question, let me answer you as follows. Mobilization was not very well measured, last minute mobility and last minute reactions and indecisive electorals. They have a certain tendency and they go for one of the two sides, or those electors may not walk along and say that I'm going to vote for Trump. Of course, there may be some sampling problems, sampling errors, but then again, they are embarrassed. Some are embarrassed to say that they are going to vote for Trump. Yes, indeed. That's exactly. And let me now continue with the answer of your second question, because that's the more important question. Just imagine these people will feel themselves shy. You are unable to explicitly say that you are going to vote for that cause because they are intimidated that people will criticize you, and they feel embarrassed, they feel shy about that, and at the same time they are not sure whether the thing that they will do is a good thing, but still they go for that direction and vote for that person. I think that's the key concept of our era: lack of confidence and even intimidation. including America. Just imagine 8 billion people on this planet are all intimidated. Why? Because everything changes so fast. There are some revolutionary changes and transformation, as Schumpeter once said, and is still an important concept in literature. These are disruptive changes. And as a result of these disruptive changes, everyone feels the weight of the following question: what will happen to me? That's why everyone goes for simpler functions, repetitive functions, and they go for simpler things. Let's say the fourth wave industrialized companies they prefer to work for, they are so intimidated about their future that they would like to focus on that fear in the short run. And in order to tame down the fear of theirs, they always ask the question, what will happen to me? Tell me a story, they say to the politicians, so that I don't feel myself as bad as I do now. So what Donald Trump offered actually to these electors was exactly this, or what other politicians are offering. This is exactly a response to this demand. And then we, as the owners of that demand, you may not be included individually, but as a part of the society, we make that demand. And then when the results come, and then we say, what kind of a man is this? We say, just imagine this is the US presidential candidate. And the candidate says that I am not going to recognize the results of the elections if I don't win. So are we going to make a character analysis, or are we going to think about Republicans? 7 months prior to the elections, freedom was granted to Obama. That was 7 months prior to the elections, and this time it's 1 month prior to the elections, and that's that double standardization, and they are not disturbed. So they are the ones that are problematic, but we're the ones that demand for such politics, I mean societies, because we feel lack of confidence and we are intimidated as different individuals in the society. If you make deeper analysis, you may ask what will happen or what has happened to the automotive industry in Detroit. And Trump says, don't worry, I'll bring it back. Trump says, you don't say, look, those automotive companies are buying gun because the former automotive industry was based on combustion engine, and now come the electrical vehicles. So you won't find a place in that factory because it's going to be a dark factory. It's going to be 3 people employed by the factory, 2 security guards, and 1 guy in charge of turning on and off the power. So you're not going to be employed ever again in that factory, they don't say. Most of the things will be made by robots, because when you tell that to the society, they will be terrified. That's why someone else comes and says that I'm going to bring all those automotive factories back. So if this is politics, then that actually concerns me, because this was how the democracy in Athens came to an end millions, thousands of years ago. So with such division in the US, the same rule applies to other divided societies. It goes to one of the ends. I mean, one will suppress the other end, or they will decide not to coexist. So at this very point, Namık Tan, I'd like to turn to Namık Tan, former US ambassador for Turkey. Can you hear me, Mr. Tan? That's the most critical question. Thank you, thank you. I hear you all right. Hello, good evening. What you have just seen on the map and what Mr. Ahmet and Mr. Mehmet Ali just told us, this US that we're discussing today and the US in which you were assigned as an ambassador, do you see a significant difference, and what that difference is, if there is a yes answer to that? It's such a good question. I can see a difference. I can see it. And I suppose many people are unable to see that difference. The term the term that I had in the US, that no longer exists. The same rule applies to other parts of the world as well. It's not specific to US only. Significant and transformative processes are underway in different parts of the world, and societies go through this transformation in such a fast way that societies seem to be behind the change. Unfortunately, especially because of the technological leaps, the whole world is having these technological transformations, and US is nowadays going through the pains of that. Because if I tell you why, let me tell you the following. If I ask you to draw a circle on a piece of paper or into the air, you would do it with your finger doing this. But then again, if you were to do it on a piece of paper, you could draw a circle. But if I tell you to draw a proper circle, in order to do that, you have to put your finger on one single point, or you have to use um, a ruler. So you need a balance point. So US has always been a balance point, but US gave up playing that role. It was towards the end of my term that I was about to leave the US. It was the second term of Obama, and US started getting away from that position. It became more introvert. So in the past, in that during the old times, everyone was able to see their position because it was like a reference point. US was always a reference point, and everyone was able to place himself or herself in that well organized circle. But then again, this is no longer the case. There are so many circles intersecting with one another, and nothing is in order. What is happening today is not unusual or extraordinary to me, both in the US and in different parts of the world. I see that there's a wave. The wave is a wave of introversion, and everyone is one way or another closing up. It's a populist wave, it's a nationalist wave, and the whole world is under this wave. We are going to suffer from that. There's no easy fix to that, Cüneyt Bey. It doesn't have an easy fix. Everyone is going to encounter that. There is also an ongoing debate about geopolitics. It was a few years ago that I had heard that from a banker, a senior Turkish banker. He had said that America is self-sufficient when it comes to energy. So what if US decides to retreat from the Middle East? What will Turkey do? He had said. Now you take a look and you see that there is the new Silk Road, as we call it. So with a new belt, there are plans in order to connect to China, and especially with the most recent development, the coronavirus, the addresses have changed. Everything is changing. So do you think that there is a change in geopolitics as well, Namık Bey? Do you think this is going to be for the advantage of Turkey or to the disadvantage of Turkey when US-Turkey relations are concerned? Well, of course, there is this change. This change is not only internal. In the geopolitical balance, we see serious movements. We encountered that in the Middle East most recently, US coming closer with the Arab world from the perspective of the Middle Eastern problems that we are also suffering from. That actually shook many points of balance. We should be more accountable as fast as possible, as soon as possible, and we should make sure that we reorganize our politics. That's what I think. What is this reorganization, rearrangement? Let me tell you, for instance, our relationship with Israel. Our relationship is or has been handled with great care. However, we seem to be encountering difficulties managing this relationship these days. We should not look for the one who is responsible, whether it's Israel or Turkey. Instead of that, we should think what this brings to us and what this takes away from us, and we should make sure that we reorient it back to the normal track. So what happened in the end? Many Muslims, Sunnites, started having talks with Israel. They no longer are cross with Israel, and this actually had a bad impact on our interests. We should actually decipher these geopolitics, and we should not be focusing on our country only. That's my understanding. I also would like to, well, this was not asked, but then again, I believe this is very important. Regarding our relationship with the US, we only see the state and the state institutions, but then again, when US relations are concerned, we should think about the whole country. If we are to have progress regarding our relationship, we should actually train our people about the dynamics. Turkish people, it's not only the Turkish bureaucrats or business people or Turkish academics. Everyone, every single individual in the society has a responsibility. I see Selçuk Bey on screen, for instance. We have 13 to 15,000 students in the US. These are brilliant children, quite smart, and they attend great schools. They have their college education, so I am sure that they will contribute positively to this relationship. But then again, this has to be very well coordinated. Business circles are doing their best, but then again, there are some mistakes made. The Congress, for instance, we always think that in our own structure, in our state structure, and also regarding the official relationship, we always believe that this is the relationship between the highest level possible. We don't understand the factor that Congress plays. We should make sure that we also establish good relations and have progress in our relationship when it comes to the Congress. Thank you very much, Mr. Tan, for your contribution. I'm still thinking of Kenan.
2-3 questions back to back. Commercial volume of US-Turkey, what is it? 22, 24 billion dollars of trade volume. And you'll remember 2 years ago, our president and US president put a target of $100 million. We're always looking as businessmen, you and I, if we have a friendship, what is the size of our trade relationship? If it's $20 billion, it's too little. It should be fivefold, definitely fivefold as possible. This is too little. What are we trading in with the US? I don't want to go into details, many products, but what I would like to say is the following. This $20 billion, how is it going to go up to $100 billion? If you have $100 billion worth of trade relationship, it's more difficult to harm the relationship. If you have a $20 billion worth of a relationship, every smart person say our relationship with Turkey is not going well. Our relationship with the US is not going well. I mean, can we really break away from them, you ask? Of course, there's a spirit of alliance and NATO and geopolitical importance, but there's also that trade volume between the two countries. As a businessman, I'm in charge of that. That's why I'm saying it. The more of a trade volume you have, the more important you are in the country and you're taken seriously. And that was our target, really. For instance, we made a report, $100 billion worth of target. We took ownership of that as the Turkish American Business Council, prepared a report, and we sent it to the administrators in the US, including the president. They took it very seriously. They invited us last year. They listened to us at the ministry. We made presentations, which sectors, which products. And then the problem was, for instance, they said, Walmart, for instance. Walmart says billions of dollars worth of slippers I purchase. When you add up the entire slippers produced in Turkey, there's no way you can fulfill that. So these were interesting barriers. Wilbur Ross, as you know, came to Turkey last September, 5 days. They criticized a lot in the US. Secretary of Trade, he came, he talked to everyone. They tested, they want to have a look. And there was a problem with China, as you know, especially after COVID. This virus is coming from China. They said the underlying reality is, you know very well, that the next 5 years after that, China as an economic size may surpass the US, $20 billion worth of America. When you're $21 billion worth, you will be the superpower. Maybe the currency will change. For instance, we're talking dollars here. Nobody cares the FX exchange between the Chinese currency and TL. I mean, can you imagine US being able to tolerate this? They say, I'm running the world. If I'm remembering correctly, in 2019, they limited imports, like $100 billion worth, and they will make this $200 billion worth. In 2019, in Vietnam, they exported to Vietnam, equal to our total trade with them. Texas, as far as I know, Mexico is $6-7 billion. Taiwan, $9 billion. From us, $400 million. Our exports to America increased only by $400 million. What is written in those reports is that this supply chain, you can do it with us. Let's be among those countries. We said Mexico, Taiwan, Vietnam, Cambodia. We're trying to get it on that boat. That's the entire story. The new administration now, whoever is going to win, Biden or Trump, we're going to continue. I mean, we want to position Turkey. Turkey should be one of the supply chain countries so that
Biraz önce ben
they
Murat
can
Yetkin'e sordum. Dedim ki ya büyük Türkiye gibi yani her şey çok kötü.
share of this 200 billion now. I forgot to ask one thing to him, and you are the expert really. For years, you managed the media in Turkey. You were the CEO of a media group.
Amerika Birleşik
So you
Devletleri
know the relationships between journalists and politicians. Now, when you look at the media in the USA, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, these are mainstream media. They were even more against Trump. Now you look, there are many, many claims about Biden, and I'm looking and I'm saying that Trump is right. Not even one word is printed. You know, 50 news against Trump, 2 news against Biden. And when I speak like this, they say it's like this. Hitler comes as the media.
yüzden
We
buna
see.
karşı kendimizi savunuyoruz diye. Onlar da
Shall we
farklı.
say, let's give him the right to say something? That's how we're defending ourselves against them. They are aware of what they're doing, the media, but that's their defense. At least this was one dialogue I had with one of them. How do you find this? I mean, the headlines look, Trump, because we're experiencing similar things in our case as well. They're going head to head still. In spite of the coronavirus, in spite of the fact that he got sick, all that unemployment, economic crisis. So how do you find the American media's approach to Trump? In a channel I watched yesterday, they started to accuse themselves. They were saying, well, we were the ones who brought him here. Let's not always look into the politicians. We created this division, they were saying. We published the figures of those research companies. We caused some things, they're saying. They're saying we no longer can trust ourselves. Why? Because let's not tie all of this to Trump, but from day one, as you know, he did not call the media to announce them anything. Always of me, hear it from me first. And you know, media does
Başkan çağırdı bunu
not
anlattı.
like this. Media loves
Haber vermedi.
breaking
Hani
news. He did not announce anything,
ya Cüneyt Özdemir'e güveniyorum. Cüneyt
especially to anyone. If I'm going to say something important, I trust Cüneyt Özdemir. If I tell this to Cüneyt Özdemir, he will go and run with it. He never gave this pleasure to media, and media does not like this. Why not? Because he called media the fake media, the untrustworthy, lying media. An American president, if he says this 10 times, conduct the research in the US today, I guess media will not turn out, but there's a program called 60 Minutes, talking with the anchor woman. The woman said, you had told me that I'm saying they're doing fake news because when you make news about myself, I keep telling, didn't you say that? She reminded, and he walked away. So you came up with some names just now. In the States, when I listen to a piece of political news, I go to CNN or Fox. Why? Because CNN is Democrat and Fox is Republican. Now, with your permission, I'll just go into this now. The boss never says to the employees of the channel or the newspaper, you're going to do this, you're going to support this party, you're going to be sympathetic towards this party. The boss never says so, because when people are being hired, they're hired if they are a party supporter anyway. If I'm a media corporation, which is Republican, if I'm hiring you, you fill out who is your mother, who's your father, where did you go to school, who do you love? So it's obvious which political party side you're on. So if you're working at Fox, you are supporting Republicans. You know, nobody tells you what to do. But 2 days ago, something interesting happened. Fox, after 1 a.m., suddenly took a U-turn, left supporting the Republican Party, and suddenly, and we've been hearing about this for a long time, Fox was going to make this U-turn. So they suddenly did this U-turn. I listen to Fox now, and they are really criticizing the Republican Party. But there was gossip yesterday. Did you hear? Trump called Murdoch, Fox's owner, and shouted, "What are you doing? You can't do this to me." I read a tabloid news on the internet. It is not something that one is used to. Fox turning away from the Republican Party. I listened to CNN. CNN starting to stand in the middle. Well, if Biden is winning anyway, they left being too aggressive. They abandoned carrying the flag of the Democrats, and they just tried to manage, because you have to calm down the public opinion. The real question is, so many votes for Trump now. And the fact that mainstream media alienated Trump supporters, how shall I say? These are the not men, or they're redneck anyway, they said. They, you know, I mean, not exactly like that, but, you know, between the lines, this is what they say. They do it in their columns. They do it between the lines. Does that have a role? A big success. You said it just now, you're right. In spite of all that negativity, America has had this 34% drop in the economy. It increased just 1 week before the election. It wouldn't have an impact. But in spite of all of these, from day one, Trump and the Trump administration, we all know how ruthlessly they were criticized. Incredible, a scandal every day, a problem every day. Plus, anybody who left the White House, everybody wrote a book on it. Closest friend recorded his voice. He submitted the voice records. Trump's nephew wrote a book saying, this is the lousy family I have. Exactly. All these things happened, and in spite of these, this has been an interesting success still. One of the participants said something important just now, Cüneyt Bey. Your story. If there are people who want to hear your story, and if they say, this is my story, this is where I want to go, we keep saying America is divided. Are we in agreement? Yes, of course. I mean, how can Trump do this within a period of 4 years? I mean, if the society is not ready, if the society is somehow coming that way. A man in 4 years, how can he divide a country? Let's not be unfair. Trump came and divided America. It's not possible, which means that Trump told a story and people bought the story. This is what I want to hear. The guy who's administering me has to do this, and they voted. And now this. Trump maybe is being beaten now, but Trumpism will continue, they say now. From now on, this is how it will continue in the States. This will not be forgotten. Up until now, presidents came and went, a new one came, etc. And the old one is forgotten. Now, this will continue, they say. So you can't really, there is this expectation on the part of the people, obviously. And what people wanted to hear, Trump managed to tell them. That's why people went and voted for him. 67 million, 70 million people we're talking about. Total number of voters is probably, I don't know, but sometimes we're being unfair. We shouldn't be unfair. Here, the media kind of criticize itself about this. From time to time, they do this, but will it be fine from now on? I don't know, but maybe after Biden, this tension will be replaced by relaxation, and made good money. They hired new correspondents, and they emotionally profited from that tension. They were nourished by it. They were watched more. They had higher ratings. New York Times started to make money. Now they say once Biden becomes president, the TV watching rates will come down. They say, why? Because there will be no more excitement. There will be a stagnation period. There will be no fights. And that's what TV is reflecting. When people come home, they want to see it at night. They want some excitement. They're saying that's going to lighten up. I don't know if it will be reflected on their revenues, but that's how media is in America. At least they can self-criticize. That's important. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you. I'm continuing, so thank you very much. Yunus, let's continue with you. Nothing's moving. Joe Biden 264, Donald Trump 214 still. They're blocked there, but some people from the team said in the Senate they're 48-48. That's also being counted slowly, right? 4 senator seats are remaining. Alaska, that's just being counted. North Carolina, 1 Senate. Georgia, 2 seats remaining. As I said, 2 Republican candidates may be leading in Georgia, but because they were voted below 50%, 2 senators may have to be voted in January. That's what being talked about. To summarize the election in one sentence, 2 different Americas are in fact running to the ballot box. Trump and Trumpism. People believing in populism. They said, oh, we're losing the presidency. They say they were concerned and mobilized. And Biden's America said, this is our only chance. That's why they ran to the ballot box. And you'll remember, we talked about this previously as well. For 2 weeks, Trump was talking about the likelihood of losing and was saying socialists will come, communists will come. He demonized Democrats and invited his own voters to the ballot box. Now, Republicans received a very high rate of votes they weren't expecting. Cuban migrant women voted for them. North Carolina, Georgia, young people voted for Trump in 40%. Young voters are always famed to vote for Democrats, but we didn't see that to be the case in North Carolina and Georgia. Sometimes some young people kept saying they were going to vote for Trump, but they went and voted for Biden, really. In parentheses, what will Trump do if he's beaten? In the subtext, we can read one aim of Trump is to establish a media organ, alternative to Fox, more extreme, more populist. That's what he aims to establish, a media group as such. In these elections, there are the recounting processes. Trump cannot say I lost. And one aim for that is that he has the chance of being a candidate again in 2024. If not him, Ivanka Trump, his son, his son-in-law, these are all being talked about because the Republican Party is turned into something where the Trump family is dominant. I keep hearing sound came, sound went. I keep reading the chat from here. I read your remarks. Yes, Kenan Bey, come here. Now, I think this is a big broadcast. We are broadcasting it from how many platforms? Cüneyt Özdemir YouTube channel. That's the main broadcast. Apart from that, TAİK has their own YouTube. That's completely English. The other side, Facebook. Also, Turkish American Business Council members are watching us. Because they're watching us, there's a team of 300, 400 people, business people, economists, academicians. There are many people. So a system has been established. Now, because we can't close down that system, there's an echo on the Zoom, okay? Enough of an explanation. Thank you, Kenan. As you can see, because we're having this very comprehensive broadcast on different media, we have this echo from time to time. The sound comes on, goes off. Sorry, we don't get elections like this every day. And not every day do we broadcast from such a variety of platforms. This is really, we're achieving something impossible. When you go on TAİK, there's English simultaneous translation, etc. As I said, on Zoom, there are many, many business people, academicians watching, including you. Generation Z included, business people, all important people of Turkey are watching this. So it happens from time to time.
En fazla Kenan'ı çağırıyorum. Kaşlarımı çatıyorum. Kenan ne oldu diye soruyorum. Tamam. Tamamsa devam edelim şimdi yani bu noktadan sonra. Selçuk Şirin hocamız bizi bekliyor. Dur bir Emre. Bir Selçuk Hoca'ya bağlanalım. Selçuk Hoca.
So let's now connect to Professor Shirin. Mr. Shirin is in New Jersey, not in New York. So can you hear me all right, sir? Yes. I'm doing fine, but I don't get to see you. Well, even though we don't see one another, we follow you from your successful broadcast on YouTube. Can we do something, Kenan Bey? It's not me, I suppose, but the sound is terrible. Okay, continue. Okay, now it's much better. I don't know what we will drink after this fermented grape juice or what. So what do you see when you take a look at the table? You have been living in the States for such a long time. What kind of elections are these? I mean, has it always been such? We started learning about the US electoral system. I was watching the news last night, and it's as if we are watching the news about elections in Turkey, like Arizona, get this vote and that vote. Even in evening news, we had so much detail. Of course, we're going to close the follow-up. But then again, the anchormen were referring to Nevada and Arizona. I wouldn't be able to spot it on the map. So how do you see it, sir? Since you're in the States, when you watch the news, how do you see the development, sir? I've been here since 1996. And when I came here, it was the second term for Clinton. And on the day of the elections, I was not aware about the elections. The participation rate was quite low and there was no discussion. And then in the year 2000, it was a bit more significant because of the debate between Bush and Al Gore. And then during the first elections of Obama, there was some interest shown, but then again, it was never like this one. On Tuesday, all the meetings and all the classes have been postponed at NYU because everyone was focusing on the elections. The interest is incredible. There may be different reasons to that. You probably touched upon that with previous participants, but let me tell you, the Americans and experts or professors that show up in the news programs learned how complicated U.S. election system is. For instance, someone at CNN Turkey made a mistake and everyone was criticizing that person. Well, even here they make mistakes because it's a complicated system. It's a decentralized system. And there is no one single authority like the Supreme Elections Board in Turkey. So each district has its own Supreme Elections Board. It's not centralized. Everyone asks how the ballot counting should be, or the vote counting should be done, whether it's first mailing or the actual ones. Well, there's no centralized action taken. It's both good and bad. But then again, Trump can't give a call and people manipulate the things. Is there a problem? Can you hear me all right, Cüneyt Bey? Well, 400 people are following you on Zoom. You probably are able to see them. I suppose someone on Zoom unmuted herself. Quite natural. For instance, I give my lectures on Zoom, so I know what goes on Zoom. That's fine. Okay, let's talk about that at another broadcast. After 2000 and onwards, in all the elections, Cüneyt, I would say America was divided already. America has been divided just like a watermelon, be it Trump or Biden or someone else. The division is beyond these candidates. No matter who the candidates are, both parties would have 40 plus percent. They don't take a look at the candidate. They have the conventional elements that they consider. All this propaganda, all the discussion. I mean, it's all 10%, 10% of fluid electors, and they're the ones who decide, who determine who the next president will be. And they have the 6-7 districts, and that changes on a yearly basis. I suppose one of the most interesting cases about this elections is that Fox News on night one gave Arizona to Biden. That was quite interesting among everything that has been going on. I think that's the most significant thing, and it has a big impact on the result because whoever gets Arizona gets the elections, because options multiply after that. Biden has 6-7 different winning scenarios. Back then on night one, there were 27 different scenarios, but then again, Trump doesn't have such an option. If he wins, it's going to be quite close. But as far as we can see, Biden is expected to get 270. He is able to, I mean, Biden is about to get that. Is that the air in the media? So are they all for Biden, or do they still keep it in suspense? It was, I think, Mr. Yalçın who said that Fox News now turns its face to Biden, and CNN is acting as if the ballots that are counted will determine the results. But then again, we know it. People follow the results of the elections from different resources, like Cüneyt Özdemir's YouTube channel. Yeah, or Selçuk Şirin's YouTube channel. We are all in the similar categories. Maybe if not the same, I am in the subcategory. Thank you very much, distinguished professor. This was the advertisement about you and about me. Thank you very much for your participation, sir. We lost the sound, I'm afraid. Okay, let's now have the map on the screen again, and let's now take a look at the results, the most recent results. Which parts are the most important parts, Emre? Today at 8 p.m., we will get the results of Las Vegas, but don't forget that whatever happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. Okay, we should make these lousy jokes as well. So the number of ballots from Nevada, just imagine the situation we are in, the number of ballots counted in Nevada. How much has been counted so far? If you click on the district, okay, bring it on Las Vegas. It's the red one, yeah. Click on it, says Mr. Özdemir. I can't read it, nor can I, says Emre Bey. But if you, okay, 8,916,000 is the number of votes. 83% received by Trump. So what does that mean? It's a small district that in total there are 3,000 votes. So most of the ballot boxes have been opened. So if we come to Las Vegas, the rate is still lower. Las Vegas is where the Democrats are strong. So all the votes are claimed to be for Biden. But Trump says, no, we were quite good. And 1 million doors of Nevada people have been knocked on. And we had physical contact without wearing a mask. They paid visits to people, and that's how they caught Corona anyway. But click on that Las Vegas. When you take a look at the number of votes, it's quite high, but Biden has 53% and 72% of the ballot boxes have been opened. So we will learn what the remaining 28% is going to be. Then we'll know what happens in Nevada. This is Fox News. So on that map, and Biden will get 273, but Fox News says that Trump is actually ahead of Biden. All the votes that will be counted will be for Trump. So Trump's campaign is to win Pennsylvania and Nevada and Georgia and North Carolina. So on Friday or Saturday, they believe they will win. But then again, it's very difficult for us to lose Nevada or Georgia, says Biden. And with the adding of the mail votes, if Democrats get it, so we will get way above 270. We will reach 300, Biden says. Thank you, Emre. We will continue, but now let's turn to the U.S. We have a senator from Louisiana, former senator of Louisiana. Welcome, sir, Mr. David Witter. My question for you is as follows. How do you evaluate this elections? Have you ever seen an example of such elections? Are you surprised by the results or the fact that it's still not certain, the results?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you, and it's great to work for TAİK through my firm, Mercury Public Affairs. We've had a great working relationship. Certainly, this is an unusual election, but it's 2020, so all of 2020 has been pretty darn unusual. However, when you say, have we ever seen something like this before? Well, there was 2000, where the result was not clear for 37 days. I lived through that. I was a member of Congress at the time. So that was even wilder and more uncertain than this election so far. We'll see how this develops. This could stretch out for 37 days too, although I would be a little surprised if that happened.
Canlı konuşuyoruz ama Senato da çok önemli, bunu biliyoruz.
Well, the Senate, we talk about the Congress, but Senate is also very important. Last term, we had more Republicans in the Senate. So if Trump is not elected as the next president, do you think that Senate stays with the Republicans? And do you think if that's the case, what kind of an impact will this have on Turkey-US relationship?
Yes, well, that's a huge factor. You're right. This current Congress, which is ending in early January, the Senate has been 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. Two of those, who I call Democrats, are independents, but they caucus and generally vote with the Democratic Party. It's pretty clear, although not all the races are called, but it's very clear that the Senate will stay Republican. Republicans will lose 1 or 2 seats perhaps. My guess is 1 net, but the Senate will stay Republican. That is a huge factor, particularly if Biden wins the presidency, which is expected now, although that's not determined yet. And the reason is that puts the brakes on all sorts of radical proposals that the Democratic Party would have otherwise pushed through. Major tax hikes, possibly packing the US Supreme Court, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of foreign policy, I think it will have less impact, but it's certainly significant. And I think it goes to the fact that any foreign country, certainly Turkey included, long-term needs to develop solid, positive relationships with both Democrats and Republicans, including on Capitol Hill. I don't think a country, including Turkey, should ever take...
Hiç görmediğimiz kadar bölünmüş durumda. Ve konsolide de oluyor bölünen taraflar. Cumhuriyetçiler kendi içinde, demokratlar.
Well, I suppose there are divisions and there are consolidated divisions, Republicans among themselves and Democrats among themselves. So US will continue to continue on its path, even if there's no Trump as the president. What do you think about the status quo? And do you think that this current status quo will have an impact on the foreign policy as well as domestic policy of the US?
Sure. Well, if Biden is elected president, there'll certainly be major changes in terms of foreign policy and Turkey in particular. I think President Trump has been a very solid friend of the Turkish people and the Turkish government. He has, by all accounts, a strong relationship with President Erdogan. I don't think that will be nearly as true under a President Biden. I'm not saying policy will take a U-turn or that it will be dramatically different overnight, but I do think a Biden administration would take a somewhat stronger or harsher posture towards Turkey on issues like the S-400. Under the Trump administration, for instance, the bureaucrats and the long-term government officials recommended various sanctions against Turkish individuals over the S-400. That was vetoed by President Trump. I think something like that would be more likely under a President Biden.
David Bey, siz Biden başkanlığında Türkiye...
Mr. Witter, do you think that Turkey-US relation, what do you think Turkey-US relationship will turn out to be if Biden is elected as the president? Last question.
Again, I think it will be somewhat more challenging than the last 4 years. Obviously, in the last decade or more, there have been significant challenges that have somewhat divided Turkey and the US. The relationship is not nearly as strong as it was, say, 15 years ago. President Trump has mitigated that negative turn somewhat. I think a President Biden would do that less so that there would be more tension, again, over all of the obvious issues like the S-400 missiles.
Sayın David Witter, çok teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witter, for your participation and contribution and sharing your views. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
Now
very
we
much.
continue with
Şu anda
we continue with Ahmet Bey, but before that we will have a political consultant who served at the White House and also some other offices, civil freedoms, migration are some of his areas of specialty. Harris wanted me to emphasize that whatever he says during this broadcast are all his personal views, no official views or no official points that he represents. Welcome, Mr. Tarin. Welcome to our broadcast. We have both Turkish and English during our broadcast. On TAİK website, we have the English simultaneous translation as well. How do you see the situation, Mr. Tarin, when you are to make an evaluation of the elections? Are you surprised by the results so far?
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. To be very honest with you, I'm actually not surprised at the current state of the elections. We know that the United States currently is a very, very divided country. Over the past 5
Duyabiliyor musunuz beni? Bir donma oldu ama sanırım.
I think the screen is frozen. Mr. Tarin, can you hear us? Let's wait for a few minutes.
Şu anda evet sanırım Ahmet Kasım'la konuşalım şimdi.
Okay, let's continue with Ahmet Kasım then, because the screen is frozen. So how do you see the relationship between US-Turkey business circles? Trump has started a new diplomacy in the Middle East. A new plan has been formulated by Kushner. And we were discussing that this would have repercussions on the Eastern Mediterranean. And Pompeo, the foreign secretary was traveling from one point to another without stopping by Turkey. Diplomatically, this was never the case, because if they traveled to Athens, they would also come to Ankara. So it's a new world being formed, or it was a new world being formed. So Ahmet Bey, no matter who is elected, do you think that Biden would continue with the same policy, like Jerusalem is recognized as the capital? Biden tweeted today and said that Paris Agreement, today Paris Agreement has been abandoned by the US, and the day that I will be elected, US will go back to the Paris Agreement, Biden had tweeted. So do you expect such a change? This Jerusalem issue and climate conference and the Paris Pact, it's not the same thing. I mean, Paris and Jerusalem. Regarding the Jerusalem decision, no doubt that the decision was taken with the support of Biden supporters as well. People with more Democrat tendency were into this idea as well. So we can't say that Biden will ignore that. These people may not be happy with Netanyahu nor the right wing in Israel, but then again, their view would not be dramatically different when it boils down to Jerusalem. And as you know, I mean, if you're able to resolve the Jerusalem issue, you will bring world peace. That's a general viewpoint. Well, Kushner was actually all air, saying that this is the Kushner plan and it's going to resolve the whole Middle Eastern issue, he was saying. But do you think this is indeed belonging to Kushner? Do they have a red book in the US? Well, this deep state, we know one another for such a long time. I'm always distant to this deep state thing. But then again, the establishment in the US attaches great importance to that. And it is a policy that has been in place for a long time. It's not a Kushner plan. We will take a look at its repercussions, because no matter what the Democrats think about Kushner, Mohammed bin Salman, the prospective king of Saudi and the de facto governor of BAE or UAE made the plan jointly. So the general strategy and the general perspective shows that large bite, hard to swallow, is now easier to swallow thanks to this. May I ask for permission? The broadcast was interrupted. Let me turn to Mr. Tarin. Can you hear me now, sir? We lost you during the broadcast. Are you fine now? Can you hear us, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Ben de burada değerli bir akademisyen konuğum var.
While waiting for you, I asked a question to valuable academic that we have with us. Biden had tweeted and said that Trump actually took US out from the Paris Agreement, and I'm going to bring US back to the picture once I'm elected, he had said. Do you think the same thing applies to the Jerusalem issue, like Israel and UAE and Saudi coming together, having informal diplomatic activities, having these negotiations? Do you think that this will change if Biden is elected as the president?
So in terms of the Middle East, I think there will be a fundamental shift. There's a fundamental different worldview when it comes to the Biden campaign and a potential Biden administration and a Trump administration. I think you will see a shifting priorities in the Middle East. What you will see is a Biden administration potentially that would focus on maybe re-engaging the Iran deal and recommitting to the Iran deal. You will see a Biden administration that will probably work with not only the Israelis and the United Arab Emirates and other regional actors, but also the Palestinians. I think the one thing that some of the democratic strategists and analysts have commented on is that there is the missing Palestinian voice in this peace process. And so I think you will see a shift where you will see Palestinians would be brought on board. You would see the Israelis brought on board. And I think you will continue to see the expansion of bringing other Arab neighbors on board in a potential peace process. But it will not continue in the same framework and with the same framework that the current administration has approached the Israeli-Palestinian or Arab conflict.
Benzer bir durum
How would a similar situation impact Turkey? Because Trump and Erdogan's one-on-one relationship is being talked about. On the other hand, Biden has given an interview to New York Times where he said we need to support our position against Erdogan. Would Biden impact the relations with Turkey? Will it be different from that of Trump's?
So I think the first thing that you have to do when you assess American politics in American campaigning, political campaigning, is to know that a campaigner, someone who's campaigning a potential presidential campaign, is very different than someone who is governing and actually putting forward or implementing US policy as the president of the United States, not only on foreign policy issues, but also on domestic issues. A campaign is very different than actual governance. So if you see some of the comments that Vice President Biden has made, I don't believe that you will get the exact same form of implementation if he was to become president. I think the fundamental foundation of the relationship between the United States and Turkey rests on a few different points. First and foremost is that they are NATO allies. You will not see a U.S. administration that will in any way undermine the government of a NATO ally. That is, I think, that has been very clear from not just Vice President Biden, but also some of his senior advisors like Tony Blinken and Brian McKeon and others who we've heard talk about the U.S.-Turkey relationship. I think number two, you will see that Vice President Biden has had a history. It's not like he is a brand new political player on the scene in the United States of America. He was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for many years. He was also vice president of the United States for many years. He was vice president when the Turkish-US relationship was extremely strong in the beginning of the Obama administration. And President Obama and President Erdogan used to talk on a very regular basis. He was also vice president when it became a bit of a colder relationship towards the end. So I don't think you will see a drastic foundational shift between the relationship of the United States and Turkey. I think the US will continue to make sure that it has a strong and strategic relationship with Turkey as a NATO ally. I think that will not shift. Will there be policy differences and policy priority shifts? Yes, that would happen. But I don't believe there will be a foundational shift in how a potential Biden administration would view Turkey and its stability and engagement with Turkey.
Teşekkür ederiz yayınımıza katıldığınız için. Sağ olun.
Thank you very much for joining our broadcast. Thank you. I had interrupted Ahmet Bey. Tarin is an important name. He has the power to do politics, and he says not much will change or nothing will change. I don't think that nothing will change, to be honest. That Middle East analysis that I was making, let me finish that first. And what our guest has said were along parallel lines. I was going to come to what will be different, that issue of Jerusalem being the capital and the established relations. These are not relations that you can walk away from instantly. They will remain the same. However, ambassadorial functions, the execution of such functions, they will be perhaps slowing down that because they're talking with Iran, the Saudis and the UAEs and Israel will start to go sour. Even to balance those relationships, they will not give up on the Jerusalem decision, the Biden administration. But beyond that, a more disciplinarian, especially for Saudi Arabia, they will attempt at just such a policy. And Saudi Arabia will try to negotiate with them as best as they can, even if the Iranian agreement comes back. Same thing goes for Turkey-US relations. Biden is a nightmare, Trump is spring, or Trump is a nightmare, Biden is spring. You cannot view these relations in that manner. Turkey has two problems in the US. As long as these persist, even the best and the worst of the presidents for us will have to decide accordingly. Turkey has become material for the internal policy of US. One of the ways to hit Trump is to criticize the president. Believe me, somebody will do this daily, and this will be of no good for Turkey-American relations because security and military dimensions of the two countries is important. We don't have significant trade volume, or we do not have to actually Brad Pitt actors in the US, or we do not have a popular Turkish cuisine chains in the US. We have a Nusret, but Nusret has the power of how many, God knows. Yes, no doubt, Nusret will make 4 or 5 Jackie Chans, but that's it. When they are 5,000, we can't do much. So the dimensions of these relations, very successful Turks living in America, they have to play the community leader role. When that doesn't happen, we're cornered. If Turkey becomes an argument for the internal politics of the US, it will be impossible to walk away from it. And one side will categorically hit you, and the more the other side takes ownership of you, the harder the other side blows. This is not good. What Turkey needs to take note, the second topic, is relations of Congress and the Republic of Turkey. The issue of Turkey in the Congress is really a toxic topic. You mean as far as lobbying goes? Yes, lobbying. House of Representatives of Senate wings, Turkey should position their rhetoric to them. Tamer Saka is the president of Turkey Business Council in America. Turkey, especially after July 15th, has Turkey been able to explain itself? Trump administration currently, well, relations with Trump is wonderful. Biden will come, and God knows what will happen to relations with Turkey. It seems to be the perception on Turkish media. What do you see from the US? Will that change, or were relations good enough until now? Hello, Cüneyt Bey, and my respects to everyone. Now, the brief answer to your question is no. As Ahmet Bey expressed briefly, USA's politics, if you want to be impactful here, you need two basic elements. The first of these is your vote potential. Second is your trade potential. Unfortunately, in the current situation, Turkey's impact on the internal politics of US is very low, and our economic relations, $20 billion is what we're talking about. We're targeting $100 billion, but currently $20 billion is the level. And for America's size, it's a very low figure. So therefore, we need to have more effective lobbying in the US. And not just in Washington, we should be doing this in all important states. Unfortunately, in Turkey, politics is centered in Ankara, but in the US, impacting the masses, impacting the senators, the Congress, it requires more of a local strategy. We are used to try to do this over Washington, but local politics we're ignoring. Same thing in the commercial sense and political sense. So those two elements, in those two elements, Turkey needs a holistic, critical strategy to better express ourselves. Our competition, our political competition, our enemies have greater resources and are active there, and for long years. But unfortunately, we have not been able to gain the momentum we desire. We always think from the perspective of Turkey. Trump and Erdogan were getting along. Biden does not take that much pleasure. But what do your American colleagues say? Are they concerned that there'll be less trade when Biden comes? We still have a $20 billion worth of trade volume between the two countries. Do you ever talk about this? How are they saying it will be better or worse with Biden? What's the impression? In fact, I'd like to remind you the following. This American Turkish Business Council, its announcement, Joe Biden, the then vice president, had participated. He was present and has played an important role in the establishment of this business council. I believe that Joe Biden administration, especially when you look from the economic perspective, I don't believe that there will be anything negative. And our partners, our business partners in America, think similarly. So there will be differences in politics, of course, but in Turkey, there's a sizable economy by American companies. For many American companies, Turkey serves as a hub in the region, and they have significant investments in Turkey. And in fact, Turkey deserves to be this hub in every way. So I do not foresee an important change in the short term. But there will be fluctuations, I'm sure. You know, everyone has their own way, and this President Biden, I'm sure, has a different agenda, has a different priority list. But right after the elections, I believe that Biden will allocate a significant period of time to the internal affairs of America, because America is going through a significant trauma, and this election is reinforcing this trauma in every way. In spite of everything, even if Trump loses, he has received an unexpected percentage of the votes. So the important problem for Biden will be the internal politics of America first. So relations with Turkey at this point will be, I don't think, will be as critical as we think. Economic relations will continue. Of course, our aim is to make it gain momentum. Our target is $100 billion. American Secretary of Trade, when he came to Turkey last year, we had made significant progress with TAİK. Other NGOs working on this, we were all together. So this target, its updating may be delayed a bit, but I don't think there will be an important negative thing. Thank you very much, Saka, for joining us. Now I have another guest, Matthew Briza, former ambassador to Azerbaijan, energy expert on the board of Turkas and Turkish-Finnish Joint Commission, Lamor, Turkey CEO. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Something we've been curious about recently, a specific question, one single question to you, sir. In your opinion, if Biden is elected, Turkey's this new gas search in Eastern Mediterranean, Israel, Greece, the Greek, Cyprus, Egypt, the agreements they have between us, and in the agreements with Turkey and Libya, America always was against this. In fact, Trump's Secretary of State Pompeo, on their way to Crete, visited the Greek Cyprus and went to Athens, and in spite of all diplomatic expectations, passed Ankara. We saw these. In your opinion, how will the Biden administration impact Turkish relations in Eastern Mediterranean?
Yeah, I fear, first of all, as was just being said by Mr. Saka, I think at the beginning, of course, of a Biden administration, he'll be focused internally, number one. Number two, though, he is a strategic thinker, and I've worked with him personally, and he really understands, he cares about NATO, he cares about Black Sea security, he cares about Eastern Mediterranean security as well. However, he has tilted for years in a direction that Turkey doesn't like. You'll recall back at the end of the second war in Iraq, when he published a famous article where he said that maybe Iraq should be broken up into 3 cantons, one Sunni, one Shiite, and one Kurdish. And then more recently, he has been a vocal critic of Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean, as well as in Azerbaijan, supposedly encouraging Azerbaijan to be more aggressive in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. For 3 years, I was the US mediator of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. And I know that Azerbaijan is taking its own decision. So I think in the beginning, it would be rough under Biden. But I think because of his strategic foundation and his belief in NATO at the center of US national security, we'll get through that. We'll get through it. We'll get through, the roughness of his statement at the end of last year that was calling for President Erdogan to be voted out of office. We'll get through that. And my last comment I'd like to make is we should recall that even under President Trump, who does have, I know he has personally a strong, positive relationship with President Erdogan and really respects President Erdogan and genuinely likes him. And Minister Al-Bayrak and Jared Kushner get along very, very well also. But even so, as you mentioned, Junaid, even Secretary Pompeo was playing electoral politics a bit at the end here. And as you said, he bypassed Turkey, instead went to Athens, and has not recognized the complexity of these maritime disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean, whether they have to do with the Aegean or Turkey's Anatolian Mediterranean coast or Cyprus. Instead, Pompeo has kind of fallen into the camp in Washington that, as another speaker was saying, is toxic with regard to Turkey. They've come to believe Turkey really can't do anything right or in U.S. interest. That whole perspective has played into this election campaign. So I'm ready to breathe a sigh of relief when the election is over, and whoever wins can get back to thinking more strategically.
Müthiş bir bakış açısı getirdiniz. Sağ olun.
Thank you very much. Incredible perspective. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
He's saying something very important. Pompeo could not read the signs. Is not aware of the significance of this place, whereas Biden knows Black Sea, Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, and he will establish the status quo in a more sustainable manner, because it was strange for us as well. It's diplomatically, just goes to the Greek Cyprus and to Greece and passes Turkey. It means something totally different. What do you think, Ahmet Bey? That will be my last question to you. Cüneyt Özdemir, there is a presidential candidate, Biden, and the most criticized thing is how Trump treated transatlantic relations. There's a country, the largest army in NATO after US, ally of Turkey since 1952. Now, worsening the relationship drastically, but repair NATO at the same time. That dilemma, nobody will go to those extremes, and I don't think Biden will go that way. This is a package, and on this package, he'll be more of a negotiator. We should be ready. Will be more rough negotiating with Turkey, and he will be more open to external influences. So Turkish-American relations will go through a more fluctuating process. There will be tough negotiations. Process will be tough negotiations, atmosphere unsettling, but negotiations ongoing. So what should Turkey do? It should expand its repertoire, should make good use of concepts that America is used to, and reinforce the relations from that perspective. Thank you very much for joining. Now, it's still head-to-head, the elections. We still don't know who the new president of US is. What is happening on the Trump front, Biden front?
En iyi tahmin edebilecek isimlerden birini şu anda yayınımıza almak
Even though this is not known fully, I'd like to now turn to our next participant. Quite an interesting political figure, I would say, a Republican strategist, a leading strategist for PR and media. He's an expert. And on top of that, in 2016, he was in charge of communications as a communications director in 2016. Thank you very much, Mr. Lanza, for joining us. I am wondering about the following the most. Currently, when Trump looks at this picture, all this deadlock, so to say, how do you think is his psychology? What's his mood like? Is he pushing too hard not to tweet? Is he frustrated, or he is careless? What do you think his mood is right now?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for a very fascinating question. His mood is similar to various board members, on this Zoom. You guys are all CEOs. President Trump himself is a CEO, so there's frustration. There's obviously he feels things aren't moving fast enough. He's calling, he's checking in on his consultants to see if they have everything they feel they need. But for him, he turns back to his training, which is that of a CEO when it comes to these types of scenarios. So he's got his checklist. Every morning he wakes up, he writes his to-do list and what he needs to get done for the day, who he needs to contact. But just similar to most CEOs, he thinks the process is too slow, and he wants it over so we can move on to the next phase.
yarışını bırakır mı? Ya da hangi
Do you
noktada?
think he will give up this competition, this contest? Do you think this is going to be taken to the court and will take a couple of weeks or months? Do you think he will be that patient, Trump, I mean?
No, listen, if he feels that he was injured in this process, such as Pennsylvania changing the counting rules, midway through the count, if there's enough examples of that frustrate him, he will absolutely seek a remedy in the courts, and he's entitled to. That's what happened with Bush v. Gore in 2000. A lot of the local counties started changing the rules on how you count the ballots. As they started counting the ballots, you can't do that. And so, President Bush then, said he was a harmed litigant in this, and the Supreme Court found it to be harm. If some of these Pennsylvania Democratic counties want to repeat that example, I'm sure we'll absolutely find ourselves in the court, and we're pretty certain we know how the courts are going to rule. All the president wants is a transparent, fair count. And he doesn't understand A, why it takes so long, but B, he just doesn't understand why transparency becomes such an issue if it's something that we all need to have agreement and have respect for the count when it's done.
Ben bazen şüpheyi düşünüyorum.
I sometimes am wondering, do you think Trump enjoys being the president, being a politician, or is he bored with it? I have a dilemma with that. He seems to be bored at times, but then again, in the last few weeks, with his performance, with his dancing and everything, it's as if he is very much enthusiastic about it. But then again, if this doesn't work, I will be a candidate for 2024. I hear rumors of that sort, or another family member will run for the presidency. You being so close to Trump, do you think he enjoys politics?
He loves being president. It was once said to me, it's like, Brian, I've flown in private planes, I've flown in first class, executive class. He says nothing compares to presidential class, treatment. So he loves the drapings of the presidency, as most presidents do. I think, one of our presidents, LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, he liked the chair so much, in Air Force One, that he took it home with him after he left. So people love the drapings of the presidency. It has its advantages. You don't wait on the runway. Traffic clears for you. You get to engage in tough, difficult policy decisions and put your footprint. Every CEO likes that. And I think President Trump likes that a lot. So he loves the trappings of it. As for him, what happens, to accept the results, and does he come back? The rumors, listen, what I've learned about President Trump over the years, this is now, 6 years that I've been involved with him in his campaign and other avenues, is that, he's a man that, if he does get knocked down, he immediately gets up. He's got that business approach. Hurdles exist only to overcome them, figure out a structure to move forward. And if he were to lose, and we're not convinced he's going to lose yet, but if he were to lose, I wouldn't be surprised that he comes back and runs again in 2024. He has a tremendous amount of support here in the Republican Party. It is the Trump Republican Party now. It's no longer the Bush Republican Party. So I think he would have a strong foundation if he made the decision to run again. He'd be formidable, and he'd be the same age as Joe Biden, running for president is today. So there's a lot of circumstances, and he loves the torture.
Siz Trump'ın bu performansını, yani koronavirüse rağmen
against COVID-19, against the fact that he caught the virus and he recovered from that, do you think it's a significant success that he achieved? Do you think that even if Trump goes away, Trumpism will survive in the US?
Oh, absolutely. It will survive, and it will continue to grow. I mean, in 2016, yesterday's election, we had 5 million more votes than we had in 2016. That tells you that Trumpism is expanding here in the United States. You had record turnout in a lot of areas. Yeah, it's going to continue to grow without him, but he will play a role. I mean, my guess is if he doesn't run again, and he still may if he were to lose, he's somebody that's going to be active. He loves having his voice. I wouldn't be surprised if he had some type of presidential apprentice for the Republican primary in 2024 for some of these other candidates. If he decided not to run, he just loves to be engaged in the arena. So we have I'm not convinced the president has lost yet, but if he were to lose, we have not seen the last of him. He would certainly lean on a lot of his friendships that he's made over the years. It's a tremendous amount love and respect for the Turkish community, the Turkish people. But you know, we haven't seen the last of him if he were to lose.
Çok teşekkür ederim yayına
Thank you very
katıldığınız
much, Mr. Lanza, for your participation and for your contribution. So thus we have learned the mood of Mr. Trump. So let's continue with our next speaker, who is the head of America-Turkish Coalition, Mr. Lincoln McCurdy. Maybe he's going to be able to answer our mostly wondered question. Everyone wonders what business will be like once Trump is gone. That's a suspense in the air. From your perspective as an American, how do you see this? If Biden comes and has the next administration, will there be a major change? Will it be for the positive or for the negative?
Oh, hi, Jeanette. It's good to be here. Thank you for including me. The bottom line is the nation is so polarized, 50-50. And in some aspects, I think you're going to see more positive aspects coming from the White House, but the other 50% will probably be unhappy. I deal mostly with the Turkish American community here, and the Turkish American community is a little bit divided because on the one hand, they appreciate the relationship between President Trump and President Erdogan. On the other hand, from a policy point of view, I believe that most Turkish Americans sympathize with Biden's policies. So you have, it's a dilemma.
Bundan sonra ne bekliyorsunuz? Yani
what do you expect from now on? So once Biden comes into office, do you think that this will have an impact on trade? Will it be positive or negative? Eastern Mediterranean is being discussed, and there are possible CASTA sanctions to be applied because of S-400 missiles. What do you think the bilateral relation will be like once Biden is in the office?
It's going to be challenging, but even if President Trump gets reelected, it's going to be challenging. The problem is in Congress. You have so much hostility towards Turkey. It's never been as great as it has been since Cyprus back in 1974. It's a real serious problem. I don't think people in Turkey understand the challenges that Turkey is facing on Capitol Hill and the S-400. Now, if the S-400 issue is resolved, yes, I think that will open up the door to reconcile the other differences. But right now, the Greek lobby, the Armenian lobby have been rejuvenated, and they're doing a considerable damage towards the U.S.-Turkey relationship. You can't even mention the word Turkey on Capitol Hill. It's so bad now.
Yayınımıza katıldığınız için ve görüşlerinizi bizlerle paylaştığınız için Sayın McCurdy.
Thank you very much for sharing your valuable thoughts with us, sir. Thank you. Now I continue with a colleague of mine, Mr. Boratov. We have followed all the elections both in Turkey and in different parts of the world along with him. And Ferhat, for years, has been at the managerial position of TV channels like CNN Turk and other TV channels. I actually strolled along the TV channels last night, Habertürk and CNN Turk. Habertürk was focusing on the earthquake war, but then again, I felt as if I was following elections in Turkey and an election that took place in Turkey. It's as if it was a national election carried out in Turkey. I have never seen anything like that. I don't know whether you watched it, but it was quite, it is quite an interesting US elections, right? For the first time in our history, elections are so much.
Sadece Türkiye'de değil, bütün dünyada çok ilgiyle izleniyor. Ve Türkiye'de de tabii çok ilgiyle izleniyor. Ama şunu da unutmayalım, son 10 yıl içinde Amerika bizim komşumuz oldu. Yani Irak'a geldi, kısmen Suriye'ye geldi. Komşumuz oldu. Komşumuzdaki büyük bir ülkedeki seçimi izliyoruz şu anda. Dolayısıyla Dolayısıyla ilişkilerimiz çeşitli açılardan sorunlu ve çok yakın. Ben şaşırmadım ve yapılması gereken bir şey yapılıyor aslında. Keşke daha fazlası yapılabilse, daha fazlası yapılabilse derken de şunu kastediyorum. Bu mesele yalnızca stüdyoda bir tartışma yaparak çözülebilecek bir konu değil. Keşke Amerika'da ne olduğunu anlatabilecek haberciler olsa. Çok üzücü bir şey ama Türkiye medyasının şu anda Amerika'da düzenli Amerika'daki gelişmeleri takip eden çok az sayıda uzman muhabiri var. Dolayısıyla hani daha fazlası da yapılabilir diye
journalists present in the US following the developments. More could be done. More could have been done. Ferhat, we connected to Selçuk Şirin in New York, and he said that this is quite interesting. And the same thing was uttered by Mr. Mehmet Ali Yalçın'da. I watched Fox, Professor Şirin said, Fox, being such a big supporter of Trump, is these days or these moments talking about the loss in Arizona. It was quite interesting, and CNN was quite strong with the Democrats, and CNN is by now being more neutral. Do you think there could be such maneuvers in the US
kayma dün olan bir şey değil. Aslında son neredeyse bir aydır bunu görüyorduk. Çünkü Trump aleyhine kamuoyu araştırmalarını yayınlamakta son derece iştahlı davranıyordu Fox Haber. Ve Trump da buna karşı öfkeliydi. Tweetler attı vesaire. Yani ilk defa olmuyor bence. CNN'e gelince onlar da sanıyorum gardlarını alıyorlar. Çünkü hala seçimin nasıl sonuçlanılacağı bence çok çok net değil. Biraz önceki konuklarımızdan dinlediğimiz çok ilginç bir şey vardı. Trump asılacak bu işe ve mahkemeye gidecek. Mahkemelerden de ne çıkacağı o kadar da kesin olmamalı. O kadar hani mahkemeler Cumhuriyetçilerden gelen başvuruları bir tarafa koyarlar diye bakmamak lazım. Bakın şu anda mesela oy sayımı durdu mahkemenin aldığı bir karar nedeniyle. Yani o yüzden bence CNN biraz gardını alıyor Trump kazanırsa diye. İki tarafın da ne yapmaya çalıştığını görebiliyorum ekranda.
Again, I can see what they are trying to do. Trump has not lost it altogether. I mean, Trump says that. So you're saying that
mahkeme yeniden sayım kararı verebilir. Bazı yerlerde sayımı durdurabilir. Olabilir yani olmayacak bir şey değil. Bunun en son işte meşhur Al Gore Florida'da küçük bir tartışmadan çıkan süreç sonucu başkanlığı kaybetmesini gördük hep birlikte.
Al Gore lost presidency. Okay, Ferhat, thank you very much. We will continue being together with you in the upcoming days. Well, I suppose this is going to be a prolonged process. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Çağlar Bursalıoğlu is a member of the executive board at TAİK and is joining us live. Let me now turn to Mr. Mursalıoğlu. Can you hear me, sir? First of all, let me ask that. That's a critical question for tonight, for this broadcast. Are we able to connect Mr. Mursalıoğlu?
Evet, birazdan bağlanacağız. Peki. Arkadaşlar, gerçekten acayip bir...
Yes, I am connected, Miss Mursalıoğlu. It is quite an interesting... it's quite interesting that we are seeing these results. Most of the time, Turkish people talk to Turkish people, but in this broadcast, we wanted to diversify the panelists. Since we are here as Turkey-US Business Council, we have to lend an ear to different voices. We are connecting to different people from business circles and also from the political domain. So let us now turn to Çağlan Hanım. Ms. Mursalıoğlu, it's as if you were in a hurry to come join us. No, it's fine. I am taking care of the children as well, so it was dinner time for them, so I ran a little bit, but that's fine. Hello. What do you think, Ms. Mursalıoğlu? what do you think the business circles are thinking? Most of the time, the politicians are discussing, and there are people who know everything. No names to be mentioned, but then again, as a business person, what do you think about the elections and the results of the elections? Well, actually, I am my career is on financial markets, so I will take a stand from that perspective. Global markets are celebrating the end of the ambiguity. You will also realize that the Dow Jones or Nasdaq and many other stock exchanges and also Istanbul Stock Exchange, ambiguity is coming to an end because markets don't like such blur pictures. So even if the process is prolonged, even if there are question marks whether this is going to be a prolonged process, whether it will be taken to the courts or what, but still, as the business circles, as the financial markets, we're all going to be happy that this is going to come to an end. The ambiguity has not been eliminated. I don't hear you, Cüneyt Bey. Are you saying something, says Ms. Çağla Ortadoğlu? But still, we don't know who the president will be. Do you think ambiguity is eliminated? Well, currently, yes, we don't know. We still don't know who the president is. But then again, elections are by and gone. The ambiguity in the air is coming to an end. Yes, I was coming to that. It may even be a prolonged process with the objections. We will see whether that's going to be the case. Anyway, we don't know that. Back in 2000, Al Gore and Bush had 34 long days of discussion, and the risk appetite back then in the markets had come down. There were like drops of 9% in the markets. All markets had felt the negative impact of that prolonged process. But I don't see that tendency this time. Both the US markets and the global markets, as I take a look at the international markets, I see a small-scale rally. Especially I see the following pricing. It's as if Democrats will get the presidency and will not be able to handle the Congress. That's what the appetite implies. Let me elaborate on that. Technology companies are on the rise. For instance, you will recall that Biden had said that corporate tax will go from 21% to 28%. I'm not 100% sure about the percentages, says the speaker, but then again, there was a plan that Biden made in order to increase corporate tax. And for income tax, 39.6% is the planned rate for the income tax. So he was planning to do that. So this doesn't really interfere with the technology companies. The high-tech companies don't care about that. Because what the markets focus on is the 2.5 trillion dollar. Let me refer to the scenario. It's still not certain, but then again, if Democrats get the presidency and Republicans get the Senate, that's going to be the scenario. Currently, I am having a difficulty in making clear forecasts. But then again, this $2.5 trillion of financial support, if that support doesn't pass from the Senate, and if Fed has a more aggressive fiscal policy, I can see the reflections of that on the bonds. Technology companies are having this increase. Why so? Because transition to green economy and taxation to be increased. So those are not going to be possible if Republicans have the majority in the Senate. So we have officially seen this in the markets, both in the US and also in some other places where risk appetite is on the rise. I mean, risk appetite seems to have shifted to Turkey, even if it's at a minimal level. For instance, in the last few weeks, central bank disclosed that they would hold a meeting prior to the elections, and in some channels this was mentioned, an increase in interest rates prior to Biden's presidency. I think our central bank was also getting prepared for that scenario. There were clues about that. For instance, if Biden comes to office, he is not going to focus on emerging markets nor on Turkey. He will first of all try to pass these fiscal packages, and then he is going to focus on some sectoral packages. He's going to have those packages passed. I say if Biden comes into office, but if this ambiguity continues for a long time, then, I mean, we have the previous example from 2000, Al Gore and Bush, from 2000, the same volatility we may encounter in the markets, and the risk perception may go up in the markets if that's the case. Thank you very much. Maybe it's not an answer to your question while you had a totally different perspective. Maybe this is discussed at the economy channels, but not in our domain. So we continue with another American guest of ours, Mr. Vin Weber. He is a Republican. He was a former Republican senator, and he had also provided political consultancy to many candidates. Thank you very much, Mr. Weber, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Nice to be with you. Can you hear me all right?
When you get this picture, do you see that Biden has won as the president, or is it not yet over? Let's see, Trump can also be president. Is that how you're feeling?
Well, the Trump people have made it very clear they're going to fight everywhere. They're initiating a number of lawsuits and a recount. In my judgment, it's highly unlikely that they will prevail. Not impossible, but highly unlikely. The recount in Wisconsin, which is right next door to my home state of Minnesota, is not going to produce anything. They need to gain 20,000 votes there, and usually you gain 500 votes in a recount. And it's my judgment, although the experts could disagree, it's my judgment that the courts will not overturn the results of an election. So I expect that Biden will become president after considerable litigation.
Sayın Weber, şu konuşuluyor, deniliyor ki Trump...
Mr. Weber, they say even if Trump goes, Trumpism will remain. Now, those who know American politics know that Trump and Republicans sometimes were contrary to one another. If Trump cannot be reelected, will his political impact on the Republican Party continue?
That's a fiercely debated question, and so it's a good one. My judgment is that Trump's impact on the Republican Party will continue. He's immensely popular with the Republican grassroots. He has over a 94% approval rating from Republicans. He's even talking, or his top people are talking about the prospect of him running again in 4 years should he lose this election. And I believe that his supporters are intensely loyal to him, and no one could seriously challenge him, at least at this time, for the leadership of the party. Now, when you get to the Congress, that's a little bit different. The good news for Republicans actually did quite well in this election. They maintained control of the Senate. Mitch McConnell will continue to be the majority leader. And unexpectedly, Republicans gained seats in the House. I believe they will gain 10 to 12 seats, which will leave them 5 to 7 seats short of the majority. Those Republicans in Congress, although they're not going to desert Trump, they're going to be a little more independent since he will not be in the White House. But essentially, the party has been changed by Donald Trump. Its grassroots coalition has been changed. More working class people, less upper avenue, high class, affluent people. That's not going to change. So Trumpism, whatever we want to define that as, is likely to continue in my judgment.
Şöyle bir endişe var. Trump'la
The
Erdoğan...
concern is Trump and Erdogan were getting on well. They would have phone conversations and they would bypass diplomacy. They would use backdoor diplomacy, telephone diplomacy to solve many issues. Now the concern is Biden has a negative perspective on Erdogan, and Erdogan is at least president until 2023, provided there's no early election. Here's what I'm wondering. The Republicans, them being in the majority in the Congress, Biden sometimes approaching Turkey ruthlessly, will it be a force that will prevent it? Will it establish a balance? Will Republicans continue Trump's relations with Turkey? What do you think?
Well, you're right. Trump, the problem is not just that Biden has a different attitude toward Turkey, but that he made an issue of it occasionally in the election. He criticized Trump for, in his words, not my words, his words, coddling dictators, and they'd mention Erdogan among others. So Biden is almost compelled to take a bit harder line toward relationships with Turkey, but he's not going to rupture it. There are basic things that will prevent him from making matters much worse. One, of course, is security relationships. Turkey is still a part of NATO. That may be a strained relationship, but it continues forward and it's important to us. And Biden is committed to multinational organizations, including NATO. The economic relationship, of course, is also very, very important. And I think that TAİK should make even greater efforts toward emphasizing that when Biden comes into power, because it's going to be a more difficult environment. But Republicans in Congress will be a brake on any serious problems that Biden seeks to cause for the Turkey-U.S. relationship. And I don't think it's a cataclysmic event if Biden wins, but it certainly makes things more difficult because of the campaign rhetoric that he used against Trump.
Sayın Weber çok teşekkür ederim yayına katıldığınız için.
Mr. Weber, thank you very much for joining and sharing your opinion.
Thank you. It's been delightful to be with you. Good luck to all your members.
Ne bu seçim bitecek ne de bu ses bağlantı.
This election will not end. And your complaints about the sound will not end. Well, let's end this broadcast. We had this broadcast with the Turkish U.S. Business Council. I guess you must have felt the difference of broadcasting here because I hosted a lot of people here. So in that sense, Ms. Mili, working on the Turkey-U.S. Business Council, thank you very much for making us partner to those relations. You can watch this broadcast in English on TAİK website. I heard things like, why are there no subtitles? Well, you may turn down the sound, really. One last connection. Kemal Kirişçi is with us. Kemal Bey, hello, how are you? Hello, Kemal Bey, can you hear me?
Sesim geliyor mu diye başladı.
Evet, geliyor sesiniz.
Yes, I can hear you. When you look at the big picture, what do you see? We say the bigger picture. There is a contest going on, but everybody's saying, well, the Republicans will take the Congress. They increase their votes in the Senate. And Biden, high likelihood, let's say, will be elected president. When you look at that picture from afar, what do you think? Good question. As you said, right now, the results of 5 states are awaited. As you have also implied, Biden, it seems, is going to be the new president of the US. But for me, the answer to the question you have asked is as follows. America is divided. How can this state of being divided be overcome is what they're asking themselves. You said it, probably Republicans will continue to be in the majority in the Senate, which, if Biden wins, will limit Biden's hand as far as the policies he aims to pursue. Throughout the campaign, Biden has underlined his aim to reunite America. He wants to bring into the foreground the generally accepted values of America, and he wants to be able to overcome the problems Trump has so far caused. Time will tell, but the 5 key states, once the counting is over, will we be able to talk about it, is my opinion. Thank you very much. We definitely know the counting will not finish today. When it's clarified within the next couple of days, it will be better to talk. Otherwise, it's of no use. Thank you very much, Kemal Bey, for joining us. Yes, we're finishing today's broadcast here, but we'll continue with those broadcasts. Tomorrow at 12, we will be with you. This has been quite a long broadcast, almost 3 hours, but it was important. We had to have this. Tomorrow, we will go back to our own routine. Good day.
Since 1985, we have been pursuing business opportunities throughout the world by embracing this motto: more trade. Everything began with these 2 words. It was then that the Turkish private sector united to adopt a joint vision, and I was given my name. Well, who am I? I am a business platform that is empowered by my founding institutions, business councils, counterpart organizations, and members pursuing business opportunities all around the world, uniting all of my stakeholders. I am DEİK. DEİK has become the locomotive organization of our private sector. 2019, Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. Well, what do I do? Exports, imports, inward and outward investments, manufacturing, and so much more. I establish new bonds and relations through business forums, B2B meetings, roundtable meetings, conferences, panel discussions, and summits across the world. I have been vigorously striving to strengthen the dynamics of the economy, steering the world's wind of change, and enhancing interactions within the private sector. Hence, I generate major contributions to my members and to the private sector with the mission I carry. I reunite Turkish business people living all around the world under a common objective. With each passing day, people, countries, and even the continents come closer. The balances of international trade are rapidly changing, while the world economy is also being reshaped. I am not trying to keep pace with this change. I am steering this change because I consider trade not as an instrument of war, but as a tool of developing societies, glamorizing the world, and contributing to the advancement of technologies that preserve and protect nature. Therefore, I am Turkey's global horizon. I am carrying Turkey's strength to the world. Now it is time to act together. I want to make business with you through my 146 business councils. I am a business platform empowered by my members. Because our mission is business diplomacy. Since 1985, we have been pursuing business opportunities throughout the world by embracing this motto, more trade. Everything began with these two words. It was then that the Turkish private sector united